DynamX. Thank you for tuning in this Friday night at our wealth creation course. We come to you live every Friday, 6 p.m. Alaska time. That's 9 p.m. Central time to talk to you about financial knowledge, making money, keeping money, and multiplying it. And that's what we're talking to you about tonight. Now, this is part 2 of our legacy series. Last week, we talked about estate planning. We talked about trusts. We talked about wills, living wills, avoiding taxes, avoiding probate. And there's really 2 ways to leave a legacy. All right. So number 1 is when you die, you can set your estate and your legacy up to live on past you. You can also set up a legacy while you're alive. And that's what we're going to talk about right now. So we're going to talk about how to save for your children and really dive into that topic first as we kind of go through the different plans, how you can structure them, etc. But that's going to be our topic. Now, a little bit of my story. I've been in the industry of finance for going on 8 years now. I've worked with every type of client possible. And one of the things I love doing is I love helping parents, grandparents set up accounts for their kids, for their grandkids to set them up for the future. And I want to talk to you tonight about how to do that. But part of my story is the way I was brought up. We never had that. So I grew up, I call it upper lower class. And basically, we didn't have college accounts. We didn't have savings accounts. When I graduated, there was no money waiting for me. In Alaska, we have what's called the permanent fund dividend. I think I only got that once in my entire life. All the other times it went to groceries and whatever else. So basically, I didn't grow up from a legacy of finances and wealth and financial literacy. I had to really figure that out on myself. And part of the mindset barrier that I want to help you overcome tonight before we dive into this is if you're like me where you weren't raised that way, meaning you didn't have money, people didn't give you anything, it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it for your kids. Okay, just because it happened to you and you didn't like it doesn't mean you have to repeat the cycle and do it to someone else. Okay, sometimes your parents are great. My parents are awesome at certain things. Finances weren't one of them. That's okay. They didn't do a great job with that. I learned from it. I'm not saying that because I had a bad experience, now my kids have to go through it too. That's dumb. Okay, so get that mindset out first and then open up to, all right, well, how could I start planning for this? How could I set my kids up? What if it only took a couple $100 a month? Like the money you spend on coffee, you could spend on your kid also, and you can have that set to where they're financially set the rest of their lives. Okay, so we're talking about how to save for your children. You can also do this for grandchildren, nieces, nephews, cousins, siblings. So if you aren't a parent, it doesn't mean you can't help someone that's younger than you with finances. This applies to anybody. So here we go. When we're saving for kids, there's different ways people go about it. So some of the things you're going to see. Now, more old school, you have savings bonds. So savings bonds, those are basically government bonds, as you can see here. That's going to be more of an old school way of doing it. These were maybe in the 1940s and 50s, really popular. Into the 60s, 70s, and the 80s, they started phasing out. And that was when banks were paying just gigantic interest rates. So the bonds started phasing out, and then people went towards CDs. Okay. So a government bond or a savings bond, it's a government savings program issued by the government. A CD is issued by a bank. So if you remember, like some of our grandparents maybe set up CDs for us, and you had these CDs that when they came to maturity, you were able to take that money and go do with it as you pleased. So a CD is a committed savings deposit with a bank. Okay, the key word here is committed. Okay, CDs, and then you had your standard savings account. So you have just regular, bank savings account at your bank or at your credit union. Nothing special about it. As we start moving more towards present time, you're going to see a couple times tonight, and you may have already heard of this term. It's called a Coverdell ESA. So Coverdell ESA stands for Coverdell Educational Savings Account. That is basically a federally regulated college savings plan. It can only be used for college. And then next we have what's called a 529. So a 529 is a state level savings program. You've probably heard of a 529 plan before. The biggest difference, the federal government regulates the Coverdell. They do have some regulation over the 529, but most of that's happening at the state level. And then you have this one. This one sounds like the boots with the fur. You get the UGMA and the UTMA plan. So this is more of a non-qualified account that can be transferred to your beneficiaries. And that's basically like just putting money away that's going to get transferred down the road. It's almost like a trust account. So it doesn't have to be used for college. We're going to talk about those tonight as well. And then lastly, we have a new product that we're releasing. It's not really new. It's 170 years old, but it's new for us. We're just selling it and offering it to our clients, the Sacred Account Junior. So this is a high early cash value dividend paying whole life insurance policy that you can set up for your kids, your grandkids, your sibling, your cousin, your niece, your nephew, whoever that might be, and be able to put money aside for them. So these are the different terms that we're going to cover tonight, and I want to dive through each of them. Most people today, when you look at savings, most people today do a Coverdell, a 529, or just a bank account. Savings bonds really are kind of a way of the past. Not many people use those anymore. And then we look at some of the other stuff. The UGMA, I used to set these up for my clients back in the day. Not many people actually know about that account. So that one's not super commonly used. And then we do have the Sacred Account Junior, which again, not many people know about this as an option. So you're probably used to hearing about this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy. These ones, like I said, this one's a little older. This one is not as well known. And then same with this one. All right. So those are the different types of accounts. Now, I want to dive into the differences here between each one so you guys can kind of get educated on, where they started, what they're used for, and really how this plays out if you pick this for the place you save money for your kid. So you have savings bond first. Now, this is funny. I think it's funny. So the savings bond, it was historically popular in World War II, and it was referred to as a war bond. Okay, so you guys ever heard that phrase, save for a rainy day? So that actually is a phrase that came from the military, save for a rainy day, and that was from a government war bond campaign. And a rainy day referred to missiles being dropped down on an enemy country. So when you buy a war bond, you're literally funding war. You're loaning money to the United States government for them to spend it on war. So that's where war bonds came in. And those basically were popularized in World War II. The war bond campaigns were pushing out save for a rainy day. Today, we still have that phrase. Now, most people don't think missiles and atom bombs when they hear it, but that's where it originated from. And the main point being is when you save with a bond with the government, you're loaning money to the federal government. It means your government is broke, you're going to spot them. They're going to pay you interest, you're going to loan them money. They're going to go spend that on primarily war and primarily interest that they're going to pay back to the Federal Reserve Bank, or they're going to lend it out to other countries as well. Very little of that actually goes to public works, all the things you think they spend money on. So you have to look at what am I actually funding? All right, so that's the government war bond. It's a very low interest rate. So typically your bond rates right now are like maybe 2-3% on the high side with government bonds, very low interest rate environment, and they are taxable. So that minimal interest that you earn is taxable. Now, the way that a bond works is the maturity can last up to 30 years. So if I buy a bond that has a 30-year maturity, it means that bond, I'm supposed to hold it for the next 30 years. They'll pay me interest every year for 30 years. At 30 years, I get my principal or my face amount back. That's how bonds work. Now, I can cash them in early. After 6 months, I can cash them in early, but the penalty is I pay 3 months worth of interest if I do that. So if I was, let's say I was gifted some government savings bonds and I had a 30-year maturity date, I'm 15 years into it, I could cash it out early. I'm going to pay interest, 3 months worth of interest in order to get that bond freed up, get my cash back, and go use that for whatever I'm going to use that for. Okay, so that's what I'm really looking at here. Now, the next thing that we're going to be paying attention to is CDs and savings accounts. So like I said, the bonds kind of in the 1940s, 50s became popular. CDs and savings accounts, those have been around quite some time as well. And those are really like when people started phasing out of bonds, they started then focusing instead on CDs and savings accounts. This is the 70s, the 80s, the early 90s when interest rates were really high. So I'm going to just do a really quick T-chart comparison here between the two. So let's do CDs first. So CDs are bank issued. And to kind of give you some history behind the CD, I don't know if you guys knew this. So a CD stands for Certificate of Depression. I'm just kidding. It doesn't stand for that. So a CD stands for Certificate of Depreciation. I'm kidding you there too. The CD stands for certificate of deposit. So the certificate of deposit came into play because banks wanted to hold people's money for a longer period of time. So if you think about, if I deposit money in a bank, they don't know when I'm going to pull that money out. Therefore, they can't invest the way they want to if they can't really cover their end on knowing they're going to have that money for a certain amount of time. So the banks came out with certificates of deposit so that the retail banking system could get the consumer to commit to having money just stable, or illiquid for 1 year, for 2 years, for however long. Okay. Typically, your CDs are going to be minimum like 3 to 6 months. Most people don't realize that a CD could last up to 10 years. So you could buy a 10-year CD. Now, the interest rates on CDs are typically 1% to 3% on average. And that's like a good CD. If you go to a lot of our banks, they're not even paying that. So if you do like a jumbo CD, they maybe will pay you 1%. So rates on CDs are super low. The money is not liquid. So in a CD, you're committing to 6 months or 12 months or 10 years, like I mentioned. And you're saying, I'm going to leave that money there for that period of time. And basically, I'm not going to take it out. And if I do take it out, I'm going to pay a penalty for pulling that money out early, so the bank can recoup what they would have made in interest, opportunity cost, from my money rather than from the investments they planned on making. So I can withdraw my money early, and I'm typically going to pay 3 to 6 months worth of interest if I do that. So if I commit to, let's say Nano commits to banking with me with a CD, he gives me $100,000. He says, hey, I'm going to do a 3-year CD. And let's say 2 years into it, Nano's like, all right, I want to pull the money out early. I can charge Nano 6 months worth of interest for him to do that. Okay, so Nano loses out on the deal. Now, it's not 6 months of interest of what he would have made. It's 6 months of what he's already made. They're going to pull that from the balance. Okay, so they're going to cost 6 months of interest. The money is loaned out more aggressively than most deposits because the bank knows they're going to have that money on hand. So think about it. If Mike signs up for a 10-year CD and I'm the bank, what do I know? I know Mike's money is mine for 10 years. I can do whatever the hell I want with it for 10 years. Mike's not going to ask for it back because he doesn't want to pay the 3 to 6 month penalty. And if he does, like, that gives me some money to recoup any losses that I might have had as the bank because I pulled out of the deal that I was in sooner to give Mike his money back. So that's CDs. Again, CDs are taxable. All right. And most people don't know this. Interest earned in a bank is taxed as income. It's not taxed as capital gains or dividends or any of it. It's taxed as income. So if you're in a 35% tax bracket, that measly 1% to 3% you get on your CD, you're going to pay income tax on it. So you're only going to actually have probably like 1.5%, maybe 2% by the time you pay taxes. Not only that, you had fees to set the account up. You've got account fees. And then if you did pull out early, you've got that interest penalty you paid as well. So that's a CD. And that is why we call it a, which one do you like better? Certificate of depression or depreciation? Depression. So that's why we call it a certificate of depression. So not a great place to put money. Next, we have our standard savings account. So these are also bank issued. All right. Obviously, with your savings account, you're earning little to no interest. The national average rate on a savings account is 0.10%. So it's 0.1% that you're earning on a savings account with a bank. Now, we all know what they do. They loan that money out 10 times on the dollar. They loan it back to us, 5% on the car note, 6% on the mortgage, 13% on the credit card. So they're going to earn those rates on that money. They're going to pay me 0.10%. Really? So that's why we don't do savings accounts for saving for your kids. I know it's liquid, but it's a terrible place to put money. Like, think about that mindset. Well, it's liquid, it's easy, it's fast. So is McDonald's. Like, does that mean you eat McDonald's every single night because it's easy and fast? No, you cook a meal because you know a meal is healthy and you know that's going to be better for you and you know that's the right thing to do. So even though it takes more time and effort up front, you know the results is what you're looking for. So you don't just go for what's quick and easy. Quick and easy doesn't build wealth. So if you're trying to save money for your kids and grandkids, like, quick and easy is not the way to go. So the money is liquid. There's no specified term. You can withdraw at any time, and it is loaned out to wherever the bank puts it at the reserve rate, which is typically 10 times of what you put in. And again, it is taxable. So if you make more than, I believe, $10 in interest, it's taxable. If you make less than $10 in interest, it's not taxable. You didn't make enough money for the government to know about it. So again, if you've made more than $10 equals taxes. All right, so that's the CD and that's the savings account. Now, this is where most people put money when they just are afraid to do anything. They give it to the bank. I want you to realize this is the enemy. This is enemy number one. Why would you give your money to them if you're afraid? Like, that's like, I'm afraid of like, if I'm a mouse, I'm afraid of the cheese and the mouse trap, so I'm going to go right into it. That makes no sense at all. So realize, like, this is actually going to destroy wealth, not increase wealth or even maintain wealth. And you also have to look at, because of inflation, cash is a liability. Okay, a liability is something that goes down in value over time. Mike, is a car an asset or a liability? Liability, because it goes down in value. Nano, are my shoes assets or liabilities? Liability. They go down in value. Cash goes down in value. Inflation is a minimum of 4% a year. So that makes it a liability. If you left your cash in this savings account, it's going to go down in value. You can buy less than you could have bought with it when you put the cash in. Okay, I talked to a client yesterday. He's in New York. He said back when he was growing up, you could buy a house in New York for $20,000. He said that same house in New York costs over $1 million now, 30, 40 years later. So if you had cash, 20 grand cash in the bank, and you could have bought that house and you didn't, let's say you just left it in the account, that means today you would need $1 million rather than 20,000, which means that cash is worth, I don't even know how many times less that is. Like, just ridiculously devalued over time. Okay, so that's the CD and the savings account. So you don't want to use those. So most people, like, when they cross off the bonds, they cross off the bank. Typically, this is the one they go to. So this is called the Coverdell ESA. Coverdell ESA. This was established in 1997. Same year as the Roth IRA. Same year the traditional IRA was brought back. As the Taxpayers Relief Act is the congressional act that put these back into play. So 1997, when it was, and this is important to realize, when it was originally released, it was literally called an educational IRA. So an educational individual retirement account. That's what it was federally classified as. In 2001, it was reclassified as an educational savings account. Now, you might be like, well, that's just a name change. Okay, but what you didn't see there is the federal government just changed the rules. It was called this, now it's called this, which means they could change the rules again. They can switch the name just because they didn't like it. What else could they switch? Could they switch the tax classification? Could they switch the penalties for withdrawal? Could they switch the limit under which you have to use the money? Could they switch the things you're allowed to use the money for? So you have to realize, when you're investing in a Coverdell ESA, it's no different than investing in an IRA, in the sense that you're in business with the government now. Do you really want to put your child's future in the hands of the government? Like, is that really what you're riding on? The IRS is going to take care of my kid. Like, I hope that's not the plan, because that's a terrible plan. So, like I said, 1997, it was classified in 2001 as an ESA. The annual contribution limit, $2,000 per year per child. So the most money you can put into it is $2,000 a year. So that's a little less than $200 a month. It's like maybe 180-ish a month, right? That's what you can put into it. Now, you cannot put any more into it. It doesn't matter if you have, extra money to set aside. Like, none of that is stuff you can put in the account. Now, there is no tax deduction, so it's non-deductible on the contributions, the net contribution, and the contribution grows tax deferred. So what that means is, if I have $1 and I put $1 into the Coverdell, I cannot write that dollar off of my taxes. $1 goes in, I don't get any tax benefits. So I'm still going to pay income tax. Now, that dollar, if it grows, the growth is not taxed, as long as the money is used for college. Okay, so it's tax deferred as long as the money is used for qualified educational expenses. Now, the issue I have with a Coverdell ESA is that it's investing with Wall Street. You can't self-direct. Like those are plans that when you go set one up with your broker at Edward Jones or New York Life or Merrill Lynch or wherever, they are not going to say, hey, let's put this in a sacred account. They're not going to say, hey, let's put this in real estate. They're not going to say, let's put this in gold and silver or in a private lending deal. They're going to say, hey, let's put this in fund number A. And this is the one you need because your kid has 18 years till college and this is the right fund. They're going to collect fees off it the entire time. So they're going to make their money. There's no guarantees. They can't promise you it's going to grow. The only guarantee is the fee. That's the game with Wall Street. They have two jobs: collect fees, stay out of prison. Their job is not to make sure your kid goes to college. That is basically the tax deferral. It's invested with Wall Street. Now, here's the deal. Funds can only be used for qualified education expenses. Okay. So if you use the funds for something that's not considered qualified, which is not always super specific, what happens is you now have to pay income tax on that money. It's counted as an unauthorized distribution. It's not qualified. Okay. And let's say your child decides, let's say you built it up. Your child decides, I don't want to go to college. I'm going to start a business. That's what I did. I'm going to start a business. College doesn't make sense. I'm not going to do it. They have two options. So if they don't use the money, they do not go to college. They've got till age 30 to make this decision. They either have to give their account away to one of their younger siblings, meaning they lose out on all this money, or they cash it out and they pay taxes on all of it. Now realize when they cash that money out, they're realizing all of that as income that year. So if the account grew from, let's say you put 20,000 of your own money into it and it grew to 200,000, that's $180,000 in income that they would pay taxes on that year. So they're going to lose a ton of value in taxes on that account. And they've only got till age 30 to make that decision. So if they're like maybe slower to start, they're thinking about college, they're not sure, like this is now putting a time limit on them. It's saying you've got till 30 to figure out and spend all of this money, which is never a good decision. If you say, hey, I've got all this money, I've got 10 minutes to spend it, you're going to make bad choices. Because if you lose the money after 10 minutes, you're just spending on whatever you can to make sure you don't lose the money. And you have to ask yourself, is that really the mindset that you want your kid to have with education? I've got to spend all of this money before I turn 30 or I lose out on it. They're not going to go, like when they think like degrees, they're not thinking about what actually makes sense and should I go. They're thinking about, I've got $100,000 that if I don't spend, I'm losing out on. I better go use all of it up. That's not the right mindset to go with. So with the Coverdell ESA, the main problems here, again, it's in business with the IRS. They've already changed it before. They can change it again. It's in Wall Street. You're paying fees. There are no guarantees. Your kid has to use it for education expenses. They can't use it for business. They can't use it for investing, any of that stuff. And if they don't use it by 30, they either lose the money or they pay taxes on all the money that's in there. So terrible program to put money into. This is where most people do save though. And then if we move on, we've got what's called the 529 plan. Now, I used to think 529 plans were the coolest. Okay. And the reason why is it's a little more flexible from a contribution limit standpoint, and realize I was a financial advisor. So I liked it because my clients could put more than $2,000 into it. Mike, if they can put more than $2,000 into it and I'm the financial advisor that sets it up, what's that mean for me? More commission for you. I get more commission. Okay. Now here's the problem. This one is actually super sketchy. So it was established in 1996. It is state specific, which means there's not one 529 plan for the entire United States. Each state has their own, which means there's literally 50 of them or however many that are eligible that are all different. So there's not like a blanket statement like here's how 529 work. It's like here's how the 529 works in Alaska. Here's how it works in Virginia. Here's how it works in Texas. It's all different. Okay, so that makes it a little bit muddy. There are no defined federal contribution limits. That means the federal government does not tell you the limit on how much money you can put into it. Okay, now check this out. Nano's kind of looking puzzled. So check this out. If somebody's trying to give their money away to their kid, they're trying to avoid estate taxes, right? They can give away enough money while they're alive. They can avoid estate taxes. So The IRS doesn't define this. Someone can look at the 529 and say, hey, this thing is not only tax sheltered, there's no contribution limit. I could give away all of the money to my kid in this fund. They can keep it the rest of their life now. Tax deferred. And there's no limit. They don't have to use it by age 30. So they could literally keep it forever, die with it, and pass it down to their heirs too. Someone could think that. Now, what people don't know is that the gift tax rates apply to it. This is not advertised. So if the gift tax rates apply to it, that means that if I am the parent and I put $15,000, I'm single, let's say, I'm a single dad, I put in more than $15,000 into that account, any dollar over that gets taxed at 40%.
For any, let's say I'm contributing $1,000 a year,
Mm-hmm.
15 years, year 16, $1,000 is going to be taxed 40% off.
So no, the 15, that's an annual limit.
Okay.
Yeah. So if Nano is doing more than 15,000 per year, so wealthy people that are like, hey, I'm gonna stack some money up for my kids or for my grandkids. They're like, hey, I'm gonna throw 200 grand or 300 grand into this thing because I can. Guess what just happened? They just lost their shit on taxes, big time. Okay. So that's the problem. Now it is, again, net dollars, tax deferred growth. And basically the idea is, again, education. The money can only be used for qualified educational expenses. This one's a little more open-ended. So you could use it sometimes for trade schools or things of that nature. Whereas the Coverdell, it's college. You've got to go to a university. If it's not accredited, you can't really use that money for it. The 529 is a little more flexible, but still it can only be used for education. So what does that mean if I'm one of the people that does not want to go to college? I've lost out on this money now. So if I don't use it, let's say your child does not use it, your child must give up the funds again, or they must pay taxes on the growth. So you're facing the same situation. Johnny, you have to go to school because I saved all this money for you. And I don't care that you want to start a business or you're interested in investing or college really doesn't work. I saved 200 grand. You better go use it. Mike, when you have kids, is that the motivation you want them to have if they chose college? No, that's a terrible motivation. Higher education. Now, again, this is invested with Wall Street. Now, here is the sketchy part, guy. So this whole thing has been sketchy with the taxes. It's about to get even more sketchy. Because it is not federally regulated and it's only at the state level, Wall Street is not legally required to disclose any of the fees they charge on a 529 plan. You can look that crap up. Wall Street does not have to disclose the fees. Now, it doesn't mean they don't. Some of them still might, but it's saying they don't have to. If there's a fee, let's say they know you're going to charge, 5.75 up front and 1.25, but they don't want you to know about the low balance fee. They don't want you to know about the 12B1 fee. They don't want you to know about transfer fees or any of that stuff. They don't have to disclose any of that. So you don't find out because they just charge it and it's not really something you pay and you don't pay attention to the account anyways. And it's not even yours. You're just hoping that it's there for your kid when your kid turns 18. So guys, this is a terrible, terrible way to save money. The 529 plan. Now, again, it's only been around since 1996. So realize it's not even as old as your kid. I've been around longer than the 529 plan has, which means that if I was born in 93, 92, whichever year I was born in 92. And that means that I would have been older than the 529 if my parents would have started one for me when I was 4 or 6. And they're like, hey, Jerry's going to set this up now. We're going to have this funding for college. Like, think about that's like walking on thin ice. You've never seen someone actually graduate college with a 529 plan. Like, think about that. That's crazy. You've not seen an entire generation of human beings pass through the college education system successfully with a Coverdell ESA or a 529. It's never happened yet. Yet you're putting all of your money in it. In Alaska, we have what's called the PFD. At least for now, we have what's called the PFD, which is the permanent fund dividend. We get paid from the oil that's up here that's being drilled. And so that's like anywhere from 1,000 up to like 2,000 or 3,000 a year, depending on the year. You would be just surprised at how many people just randomly stake their entire kid's PFD in the 529 plan. It's called the UAA College Savings Plan. When they sign up for their PFD, it's a landing page that pops up after they finish registration that asks them if they want to opt in. And if they click yes, they just send the PFD right to the 529 plan. Okay, you know the person managing this thing is making a freaking killing on fees. It's not growing. There's no control over it. And here's the problem is if your kid decides, I want to not go to college, you just stuck their entire permanent fund dividend, which was theirs. They're Alaskan citizens. It was their money. You stuck it in a college fund against their will that they can't even use now. Like, you should consider that as a parent. Why would I do that to my kid? Why am I making that choice for them? Like, I can tell you what, like with my PFDs, all of them got spent. At least I know they took care of my family, not some Wall Street guy. I am less pissed that my parents spent them all than I would have been if I found out that they stuck them all in a college plan that I can't touch and I never planned on using. Mike?
A comment from Bobby Ewan. He said, my understanding 529 plans hurt the kid's chance getting financial aid as it shows as an asset for the kids.
So that's another thing that's true is, yeah, if you've got a college plan set up for your kids, that will hurt their chances for tuition. Bobby, that's a good point. So you want to make sure you look at like this whole scope of things. Now, here's the other thing. Bobby brings up an excellent point. So the annual inflation rate on college tuition is 7% per year. Okay, so let's just do some math. Like if you have, does anyone have an investing calculator pulled up? No? Okay, so maybe even Google one. If you just pull up like investing calculator. So if we're gonna do some math really quick, what's kind of average for like college tuition right now? Let's say UAA in state. Is it like 15 a year, 20 a year?
20 grand.
24 a year. Okay, if you're on Facebook and your kid goes to UAA, we want to know tuition rates. What's kind of normal for UAA Alaska in-state tuition rates? So we're thinking maybe 20 to 24,000 a year. And let me know when you're ready with that calculator, Mike.
So I'm on investor.gov. I have a compounding interest calculator.
That'll work. Yeah. So just do $24,000 as like the lump sum, no ongoing contribution. Compounding interest rate is 7%. And let's do 10 years.
It's compounding annually, correct?
Yeah.
In 10 years, you will have $47,211.63.
Okay. So $24,000 your tuition over 10 years. Now tuition costs $47,000 a year. 47,000 times 4 years, that's over 160 grand that it's going to cost for your kid to go to college. Do you really plan on saving $160,000 in a college fund for your kid? And do you really think a $2,000 a year PFD contribution is going to help do that? 188 is the exact number. So it's almost 200 grand. And that's 10 years from now. If you have a 2-year-old, you can probably double that number. Are you going to spend 300 grand for your kid to go to college and sit in front of an old guy that read books about something that's never actually done it and then have a 50% chance of getting a job in the field they studied for? No, like that's a broken system. So why would you stick all of that money in a savings account that your kid can only use for college? Like, I don't want to be mean, but that's irresponsible parenting. Like, you need to be looking at, like, how can I give my kid options, not funnel them into this one track of you've got to go to college. By the way, this isn't even going to cover for your tuition. And now you can't even get financial aid because I just screwed you over by giving you money on your balance sheet. That's a bad plan. So that's the 529. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is called the UGMA plan. So UGMA stands for Uniform Gift to Minors. Uniform Gift to Minors. And then UDMA stands for Uniform Transfer to Minors. Now, it's pretty much the same thing. The uniform gift to minors is at 18. The transfer, I believe, is at 21. So it's just an age differential on when the kid gets the money. And that's going to change the name of the plan. And that's based on state laws. So it's a trust account, meaning you're starting the account as the grantor. You're going to put the money in the account for the benefit of your child or for your grandchild or whoever it might be. And then when they come of age, they're going to get all of that money. Now, here's the issue. If you're the grantor, there's no tax benefits. This is considered a non-qualified investment. I think the very minimal amount is taxed at what's called the kiddie tax rate, KIDDIE, the kids tax rate, which is like a couple $1,000 is the limit on that. Anything past that is taxed at your personal income rate. So if you're in a 40% bracket and you're gaining money on this short-term capital gains, let's say, you're going to pay 40% on what you're investing, which means half that money the year you have it is going to go, or when you sell that, that's going to go. Okay. So this is non-qualified. It's 100% taxable. Now, again, this is invested with Wall Street. Are you guys catching like the three trends here? The bonds that we talked about first, that's literally saving money with the IRS. Okay, the CDs and the savings accounts we just talked about, that's saving money with banks. Those guys are not on your team. And then now that we're transferring away from banks, it's Wall Street. We teach our clients, those are the three groups that are your absolute enemy. They're not out to help you. Those are the guys that are stealing your wealth and making sure that you never have prosperity. Why would you set your kids up to save with them? Okay, so it's investing with Wall Street. On these ones, your child receives the money at age 18 or age 21, no matter what. Okay, now this is scary. Think about if you have several $100,000. Let's just easy math. Let's say it's 100 grand. Mike, would you have benefited? Like, if you think about in reality, would $100,000 at age 18 hurt you or helped you?
18?
Yeah, there's no restriction. Someone just handed you six figures.
It would hurt me.
Okay, I would say the same thing. Lexi, Nano.
You can go there.
Okay, so let's ask ourselves: do we really want to give an 18-year-old all of that money with no restriction? That's what the UGMA does. When it transfers to the child, it's the child's money. The grantor has no say in it. There's no changing. There's no transferring. As soon as they become of age, it's now passed on to the child or the beneficiary, and nobody else can tell them what to do with that money. Now, the transfer account, this is if you want them to wait longer, it's age 21, but that's not that much better. Think about it, age 21, now you can drink. So you just handed someone 100 grand on their 21st birthday. Nano, did you go out and drink on your 21st birthday?
I think, yeah. I think so.
Okay.
Hesitation.
Would it have been a party if you had 100 grand in your pocket?
I spent $60 that I didn't want to spend because it was too much money for me at the time.
Yeah.
If I had 100 grand.
Okay. So that's the problem with these UGMA and UMA accounts. There's no restriction. Sure, it can't just be, funneled away for college. They can use it for whatever, but that's the problem, is they can use it for whatever. You can't control it. You can't tell them how to spend it. You can't guide them, direct them. At the end of the day, they can say, screw you, Dad, this is my money. So that's an issue. It can be used for anything. Once they're of age, it cannot be transferred. There's no way to change that. There's no ways to undo that. You've basically given that to them. It's theirs, and whatever happens, happens. So that's like when people are like, oh, but I don't want to save money in a Coverdell, or I don't want to save money in a 529. This is usually where they go to. And I'm here to tell you, it's not a good way to save money. Now, there might be some people with tinfoil on their heads in the comments saying, well, you could use a Roth IRA for your kid, which is true. But if you want to use the Roth IRA, I want you to go back maybe 4 or 6 weeks and watch our video called The Truth About Retirement Plans. That's going to tell you why the Roth IRA is a bad idea. So at the end of the day, saving money with the government, saving money with central banks, saving money with Wall Street, it does not matter the name of the plan, the tax benefits, or any of the features included, is not a smart financial decision. Those are not people that you want to be investing with and doing business with. So real quick, we've hit all these plans. We've talked about why they're bad ideas. Let's now visit, why would you save money for your child in the first place? Because it shouldn't be this arbitrary, I want to plan for my kid to go to college and that's the end answer for everything. Like, you need to actually look at the motivation and the reason why you would want to help your kid. And for me, it has nothing to do with college. It's about legacy, and it's about options, and it's about freedom. How can I leave a legacy? Not for a university, not for the federal student loan department, for my kids. Okay, and how do I give them options that I didn't have when I was their age? So here's some of the options. Okay, so you can do higher education. That's one of the things you could do. It doesn't have to be that. You could help them with a vehicle. You could help them with the first home. You can help them with the business. You can help them with their first wedding plan, their investments, retirement. Like, those are all of the things you should be thinking about. Your kid is going to go to, if they go to college, that's 4 years of their life. Okay, if they get married, hopefully that's the next 40 or 50 years. I would rather contribute to something that's going to last 40 or 50 years than 4 years. Or investing that could live past them. Like, what if I could contribute to my child's legacy by helping them with this? Okay, or if they wanted to have an early retirement, they're like, hey, I am going to go to college and I'm going to do a job thing. I would hate that, but I'm not going to tell them they can't. But what if they're like, but I understand what you're saying and I want to just let this thing sit till I'm 45 and I could be done early. I would be cool with that. I would be happier with that than sticking it in the Coverdell and telling them they have to go to college. Okay. Now, actually, Lexi has an example here that's actually something that happened to her growing up. So what did you have, a 529 plan with UAA?
Yeah, it's a scholarship.
Okay. So how much was it?
I think it was like 4 or 5 grand.
4 or 5 grand. And how old were you?
I was, I think, 13 when I got the scholarship.
Okay. So Lexi had like 5 grand granted to her into a 529 plan. Okay. And that's with UAA. And so she had that money growing and like, you know, she was watching it ready to go. And she decided not to go to college. And she tried to use that for higher education. Like, what was it? First, like a personal training cert?
Personal training cert, yeah. And then a couple others that I tried to use, but I couldn't. And then I tried to give it to our nephew, but I couldn't even transfer to his name either.
Yeah. So she basically, like, it's still in the account. She just can't touch it for anything unless she were to just go back to school.
No, it actually expired.
Oh, it expired.
Yeah, I turned 25.
Okay.
Because I never redeemed it.
So she basically had like 5 grand that she earned put into that account on her behalf, and she couldn't use any of that money. She tried to do she tried to do higher education in a way that many people that are coming up now are trying, and they're going to trade schools, they're doing certification programs, they're trying to start their own businesses, they're trying to gain skills that make them marketable other than just a piece of paper that says, I sat in a classroom. I can regurgitate answers now. So she tried to do that and she got blocked off by the system on, hey, you can't use it for this, you can't use it for that. It's expired now, too bad. So I want you to think about, like, if you have kids and if you don't have kids yet and you plan on it, these are the things that you should be considering, and you shouldn't be limiting it to, like, think about the college one. If you're still trying to make sense of, I've got to send my kid to college, let's repurpose that idea. What if you saved money into an account that could only be used for a car?
Can you step over to the other side?
My side?
Yeah, so they can see the TV.
So what if you saved money in an account that only could be used for a car? And your kid bought a car without that money and they no longer needed a car. And you're like, well, that's too bad. You have to go buy another one. And they're like, well, I don't need one. And you're like, that's too bad. I saved money for a car. You have to go use this for a car. Like, that's the same thing as the college deal. So really consider, like, where are you saving? Why are you saving? That's got to be the motivation behind it. Now, I want to introduce to you the solution. So this is called the Sacred Account Junior. So think back on every plan we just covered, all of the ones we just went over. The Sacred Account was established 170 years ago. Okay, 170 years ago. That plan was established literally like over a century longer than the other plans. Almost 2 centuries. So you're looking at 170-year track record versus what, a 23 or a 24-year track record on the other plans. So this has been proven. It grows tax-free. Not tax-deferred, tax-free, meaning that the money is never going to be taxed. Okay, it can be used for anything, which means your child could use it for their first home. They could use it for their higher education. They could use it for their vehicle. They could use it for investing, wedding, retirement, business, investing, like whatever they chose to use it for. Now, here's the thing. You maintain control of the account. So it can be used for anything as long as you decide that that's appropriate. There's no restriction other than the restriction that you, the parent, put on the account. If they say, hey, I want to go start a marijuana business, and you're like, hey, no, that's not a good idea. That's too bad. I'm not going to let you access the funds. You could do that as a parent on this account. That's the great thing about it. You're not just giving, $100 grand to an 18-year-old and saying, good luck with life. And you're not cornering them into college and saying, go hang out with your professor for the next 4 years because I put money in this thing. So you're saying we can basically have any opportunity we want to have as long as I believe it's going to be good for you. And if I don't see the benefit, I don't think it's going to help you, I can say no as the parent, and I can just keep the funds locked away until you're ready for them. So that's huge. No contribution limits. So you could put unlimited income into the plan. There's no restriction on how much. There's no Wall Street. There are no fees involved. Like imagine like you're with this, here's the deal. No Wall Street and no fees means two things. You're guaranteed never to lose money and you're guaranteed to always make money. Mike, if you're an investor, are there two better things you could hear? No, those are the things. You will always make, you're intelligent. You will always make money. You will never lose money, no matter what. Versus Wall Street, I can't guarantee you anything other than fees. So that's going to be the difference. This cannot be accessed by the IRS, creditors, or anyone other than you and your child. So it's called a unilateral agreement or unilateral contract, meaning there's one party to the contract. So if I set this up, and let's say that you know my child starts a business, they're the next Henry Ford, but it doesn't go well the first 40 times, and they file bankruptcy over and over and over. This money can't be touched. Or if the tax laws change and they say, hey, we're gonna reclassify all the IRAs and CoverdLs and we're gonna tax them all, this account can't be touched. Do you guys know how incredible that is? Like your child is set up for life with the sacred account. And then there's no taxes to transfer it. There's no penalties to pull it out early. There's no such thing as pulling it out early. So if they wanted to, let's say they're old enough now, like with the UTMA thing, like it had to be 18 or 21. Let's say they're 27, 28 years old. They're old enough now. And you're like, all right, I'm going to give this to them now. You can transfer that account to them. And guess what? You didn't give them anything. You just transferred ownership of life insurance. So there's not even gift tax. They've avoided that entire system by putting it into the policy and then transferring the policy's name over. So that's incredible, guys, the benefit here. Now, here's how it works. You have to commit to an amount. Minimum we can do is $100 a month. So if you can do $100 per month into your account, saving on your child's behalf, then you can start the account up. So you basically commit to an amount, you start contributing. And here's the cool thing: as a parent or a guardian, you can either let it ride, meaning you just let the money sit there and accumulate, or if you want to like help your kid learn how to invest, you can actively invest on behalf of your child. You can borrow the money out, you can do real estate deals, you can play the gold and silver market, you can do private lending, you can invest in different businesses. If you want to do stocks or whatever you want to do there, you can do that as well. And you can actually actively invest the money with them and teach them economics as they're growing up. Like imagine where you would have been in life right now if you would have had an account like this from the time you were a kid growing up, where you learned about compounding interest, you learned about investing, you learned about passive income, you learned about dividend spreads, you learned about taxes, you learned about all of this stuff before you were even 18 years old. That would be incredible. So you have the ability to do that with your child with this account. And again, you can maintain ownership or you can transfer it to your child. That's under your control. That's the great thing about this. And then again, here, they can borrow against the account and it will still keep growing. Think about that. Like this is the one that I think is awesome. People buy homes all the time because they're like, well, it's going to appreciate. I don't think it's going to be a good deal for you to buy a home. But let's say you did. I would rather have you buy a home with your sacred account than just taking money out of your bank. And here's why. If your home appreciates and you took the money out of the bank, you're only getting appreciation once on the home value. If you borrowed it from your sacred account and the home appreciates, you're getting appreciation on the sacred account because they keep crediting you the interest and the home. Do you want growth in two places or one place, Mike? Two. No brainer, right? So you have the ability to pull money out of this account and it still continues to grow and get credited the interest as if you never took the money out. So imagine having a bank, just to give you reality on this, imagine having a bank that paid you a 6% interest rate. That would already be incredible in and of itself. So let's say you had a bank that would pay you a 6% interest rate. Sweet, right? You deposit money, they pay you 6%. You pull the money out, you check again next month, they paid you 6% again, even though the money wasn't there. You would kind of be questioned, right? Like you go and be like, hey, is this right? Like you guys pay me this money. I don't want to steal. And they're like, no, that's legit. That's yours. We pay you even though you took the money out. That's how the sacred account works. So it's still going to grow, and it's going to grow tax-free. So not only is it 6%, it's 6% that the IRS will never get their grubby little hands on. That's awesome. And then the final benefit is this includes a life insurance death benefit. So your child is now insured, guaranteed insurable for the rest of their lives, and now they're guaranteed to leave a legacy because you set aside $100 a month when they were 2. Like, we have a client right now down in California. He's doing this for his child 6 months old. Little dude is going to have over 6 figures in the account by the time he turns 18. And his dad is interested in teaching him how to invest with that money. So think about like you guys were like Genghis Khan of investing. If you guys did that from the time you were 2 all the way up to 18, right? You would be just slaughtering it at life. This is a real kid that we're going to help do that. That's incredible. We have another guy. His daughters are all grown up. They're in their 20s and 30s. He's just now starting one for them because he's like, man, I didn't do this for them when they were growing up. I want to do it now. You can't really do that with a covered L. If they're 45 years old, they're going to be like, thanks for the college fund. Like, cool. I can't use it. I have a family and a life now, and I'm over 30, so I couldn't use it anyways. Like that doesn't work. So if you're looking at legacy, there's no better way to leave a legacy. This is the way you do it. This is the better way to do it. It's not the bank. It's not savings bonds. It's not college savings programs. Again, that's IRS, banks, and Wall Street. You guys have to stop investing because of ad dollars. Promotion, marketing, like that's the only reason you put money there is because the college spent all of that money with Alaska to be able to advertise on the PFD website so that they're the ones that get your money. How much money do you think it cost? Like, if you had to guess, how much money do you think they had to pay the state to have that ability? Probably several hundreds of thousands, if not millions, per year, and they've been doing it for decades. So how much money are they betting on making off of your child's money for them to spend those ad dollars? So just to give you an example, an illustration here, these are all of the different areas you can save for. And these are just like possibilities. There's other stuff out there. Like, it doesn't have to just be these, but these are the most common that people are typically going to be looking at. But it could be literally anything. Okay, so like you look at vehicle. One of my clients, he wants to do his with real estate. So he wants to buy real estate now. Check this out. He wants to buy real estate with the account for his kid now so that when his kid turns 18, he can gift him the account and the property. And he can say, hey, now you have to learn responsibility. You own a property. You have to manage it, maintain it. You need to learn accounting, bookkeeping. You need to learn people skills because now you have tenants. Like for an investor, that's not a great plan to buy a single family home. But for an 18-year-old, like that's a good way to teach responsibility. And there is payment there. Like, they need to go through some of those hardships to develop a thick skin. So I love that idea. But these are all the things that you can invest in for your child with the Sacred Account Junior. You know, or you could just make them have to go to college because you didn't do the right thing when they were a kid, or you didn't know any better, or you were miseducated or misinformed, or you just bite at whatever tells you is the good idea because ad dollars were spent. So here's the final result here. You can either have nothing set aside, which is what a lot of people do. That's what I grew up with. Your child will figure it out, and they're going to have to do it on their own. And I'm not saying it doesn't work. I turned out great, right? But I think I would have turned out even better if I had some financial education and help. No brainer. Okay. Or you can force your child to go to college. I can tell you that I would be a fraction of who I was today if I went to college. College would have ruined me. So if you have a child that's stubborn, that wants to go into business, doesn't like doing stuff, you know, that they don't understand, they're always asking questions, they're difficult, they're probably going to be an excellent business executive. They're probably going to be killer in sales. And you don't want to stunt that by having them go to college and learn a bunch of mindless stuff that really doesn't apply and in 12 months is going to be outdated. That's going to ruin your child. Like figure out what their strengths are and use the Sacred Account to back their strengths. That's what I'm saying here tonight, guys. Find out what their strengths are and invest in their strengths. And if their strength is not academics, shame on you for making them do academics. And if they have strengths and you had means to finance those strengths and you chose not to, again, shame on you. Like, you need to be thinking about your child as an investment and legacy. So that's what I have for you guys today. I want to open this up just for questions. Do we have any other questions or comments?
Yeah, we got one from Todd. Can any active government accounts mentioned be transferred / rolled over into a sacred account?
Todd, sometimes they can. The Coverdell generally could be self-directed. And I'll have to look at if you can put a sacred account inside of a self-directed Coverdell. I don't know if you can. I would want to say you probably can't because it's classified similar to an IRA. So probably not transferred, but you could cash it and just pay the taxes. Ultimately, you will make that money back and you're paying for control. So, and it's better to do that. Here's the thing is it's better to do that while the money's smaller than waiting till your kid is 18 or 20 and you've got this giant pot of money. And now you're like, all right, well, are we actually going to send them to college with it? Or should we just pay the taxes now that it's grown?
So if there's insurable interest because they're your child or you're the guardian, and so I mean obviously they're young, most kids are going to be healthy. Say you waited to transfer it to them later when they're 27, maybe they're fat, I don't know, whatever the issue is, right? Would that be a concern with the medical exam, or is the insurable interest strong enough to bypass that?
So it depends on your carrier. Typically, they're guaranteed insurable. Yeah, so they don't have to like retest. Like they're locked in for life now. Yeah. Any other questions?
I think that's it on my end.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Again, we are happy to have you on board. We'll be back next Friday, 6 p.m. Alaska time, 9 p.m. Central time. Have a fantastic weekend. We'll talk to you guys next time.